Assalamu alaikum, hello and welcome to my show Connecting with Saima Parwaz. I hope all of you are doing great and waiting to see my another guest. My guest for today is also a lawyer. His name is Umar Khan. Law and lawyers shape the society. Welcome to my show, Umar. How are you today?
Thank you. Alhamdulillah, I'm doing well, and assalamu alaikum to you and all the Canada One viewers, and especially the Connecting with Saima viewers as well.
All right, and how was your commute? You're coming all the way from the east, right?
All the way from the east. You know what, not too bad. Today's a holiday, so luckily didn't have to deal with the stereotypical Toronto traffic. Yeah.
Happy Canada Day.
Happy Canada Day to you as well, and happy belated Eid Mubarak.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so you're going to say something about yourself, your career. How did you join this law?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. So my name, as you kindly introduced, is Umar Khan. I am an immigration and real estate lawyer whose practice is based in Scarborough, which is the east end of Toronto. How I got there was really by chance, to be honest. Part of it was, you know, a really big part, to be honest with you, was the sacrifice that my parents and family made for it to happen. And so, you know, which starts back from my grandpa, who immigrated from Pakistan to Canada in 1970s, and then my dad who grew up here, and then my mom who came here a bit later in life. And, you know, trying to find a way into immigration law has kind of always been in the back of my mind. And so I did my undergraduate degree at York University. I did a master's degree in political science at York University as well. And then I went on to complete my law degree at Western. Throughout my time as an undergraduate athlete, and even back in high school and before, I was involved in athletics. So I was always a competitive athlete. I did shot put for track and field, which is, you know, the big ball and you see them throw it at the Olympics. And so I was quite lucky to kind of have the best of both worlds, being an athlete and a student, but also always keeping in mind that family will always be first. And so I had started in sport entertainment law. I always wanted to work and help athletes. And throughout my time as a sport entertainment lawyer, I was able to assist on immigration matters. So that seed was kind of planted then. And then I found my way into both real estate and immigration. And so, you know, life sometimes is full circle and everything's kind of come back where it started. And it's a great way for me to be involved in my community and give back in a way that I find quite meaningful. And I think, you know, my grandpa would be proud.
Of course. So your family background,
Yes.
you were the third generation here or second generation?
So my grandpa came in the 70s, my dad came when he was 5, and I was born and raised here. So whatever generation that makes me.
All right,
Yeah.
that's great. And you have siblings?
I do. I have a younger brother. He's 7 years younger than I am, and really he's my best friend.
Of course.
Yeah.
All right. So why did you choose the law? Like, is there any specific reason, or have you met so many lawyers around, or?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's a bit cliche, but you know, to be very honest with you, it's something that I've always had a passion for. I've always wanted to help people in any way. And I mean, you can really then go into a bunch of professions, but what really strikes me as interesting about the law is that it always changes. Right? And a lot of times people don't necessarily have the skills on their own to navigate those changes and complexities without someone who's well-versed, right? And so a law degree kind of teaches you how to think like a lawyer, but also how to navigate change. So for example, in immigration law, this year alone, there's been about 20 public policies that have been introduced that are temporary, right? But they don't exist in a vacuum. They change with time, they interact with the other regulations, with existing laws, with jurisprudence, which is a fancy word for case law. And so what really, even as we record this, might be true, might not be true by the time we push this to air, right? And so it's really important to have someone on your side who understands those nuances and can really just keep up and explain it to you in a way that you understand.
So you also practice immigration law and then the real estate law, right?
I do both.
How do you connect them?
Well, you know what? I think what really piqued my interest in immigration law was when this foreign ban buyer was introduced, right? So at the federal level, you know, if you are a foreign buyer, there's bans. But then at the provincial level, you can still buy subject to some exemptions. And so really, I started getting an influx of queries from, you know, people who are looking to come to Canada, but also want to start their lives and maybe uphold the life that they had, which was like, living in a big, beautiful home. And so, try to keep both of those dreams alive for people really pairs well together, I think.
So which kind of immigration law do you practice?
Yeah, another great question. So on the individual side, whether it's temporary programs, so if someone wants to visit, someone wants to sponsor their spouse, their grandparents, maybe a bigger commitment, so someone wants to study in Canada, someone wants to work in Canada, right? So those are kind of on the individual side. And then on the business side, employers, if they're looking for employees, they have to generally go through what's called the LMIA process, which is a labor market impact assessment. So
that's for the business.
That's for the businesses, right? And so I'm able to help on the employer side as well. So that's kind of called business immigration. And then on top of that, I'm also helping with refusals. And so that's where you get into immigration litigation. So if you have a refusal for really any type of application, there's generally an avenue for you, whether it's appeal, whether it's something called judicial review, whether it's a reconsideration request. I'm able to help with people who don't want to accept no as the first answer, because how many times in our lives do people tell us no, and sometimes we just sit and take it, right? If you have a no, you should see what your options are and at least just be aware of what you can do, because I've been told no a lot of times in my life, and if I took it at face value, I may have not been in the position that I am today.
Okay, so there are many kids, students, and new people, they're coming from other countries. Yeah. How they are impacting? Are they keeping you busy? Or probably.
Yeah, by God's grace, we're very busy. Canada has an ambitious target, as you know, by the end of 2025, wow. 1.5 million, right? It's a huge target. And so, it's keeping us busy on the immigration side and, of course, on the real estate side, right?
Of course.
Because, as you know, once you come to Canada, you need somewhere to live. And even if it's not buying a house, it's renting a house, it's wanting to be connected with, a realtor, for example, who can help them out. So the questions keep on coming, and, we do our best to get advice out as quickly as possible.
So are they impacting in our economy good way, or what is your opinion about it?
Yeah, I think, look, the reality is our ambitious targets are really for two reasons. Number one, we have an aging demographic. And number two, for that reason, we have a labor market shortage. So we need people here quickly. We need people here to fill those gaps. Now, the other side of it is we also have a housing crisis, right? So the more people, and if the supply doesn't keep up, right, it's really just simple economics of supply and demand. So on the housing side, we're feeling a pinch. And on the immigration side, we might also be feeling a pinch. So I think really, our job is just to support people within the existing framework. And, these policy decisions have to come from the top, and we let the experts kind of shape that policy, and we kind of just operate within it.
So, Umar, I hope you're enjoying my show.
I am.
Okay. So what makes you different than other lawyers?
You know what? I think what makes me different as a person is the fact that I care. I listen. I have a very unique background. I have a quite non-linear background. I have a lot of world experience that came from being a competitive athlete, right? So with that comes the ability to plan, the ability to work with a team, the ability to make a plan and things change and you stick to the plan, the perseverance, so many things, right? And so being an athlete kind of opens up your toolbox, and then it allows me to draw from that toolbox when clients come to me with not just their problems, but I am then expected to come with a solution. That can only work when you listen and then respond, right? And so my approach really is to be compassionate, to be empathetic, and really to build everything from the ground up, right? As much as experience does matter, absolutely, I think it also matters that you care and you hear, because what worked for your last client might not necessarily work for the next client. So I try to have a custom tailored approach for every client, but relying on the skills that God has blessed me with and that my parents have sacrificed me to be able to attain over the course of my whole life.
Friends, Umar is very friendly and also professional at the same time. If you guys need any kind of help for real estate or for any immigration, you guys can connect with Umar Khan. He's Toronto based, and his email address you can see on the screen. Hi, Umar. Okay, so what is the common myth about immigration law?
That's a great question. So the one question we've been getting the last, I would say since the policy was introduced, is if you're visiting Canada, you can get a work permit. And right, you have to understand there's two types of work permits. There's something called an open work permit and something called a closed work permit. So an open work permit is a work permit that allows you to work with any employer, right, across Canada, whereas a closed work permit is employer specific. And so it's true that if you're visiting Canada, you can work with a work permit, but you have to have an employer that's supporting you with that process. And that's kind of where things get a bit more legal and technical. And so that's number one. Number two, and I would say really the bigger one than even the first example I gave, was people coming to us asking or saying that someone gave them a 100% guarantee, right? They spoke to another immigration professional who said they 100% guaranteed. And the biggest myth in immigration law, and if I can speak directly to the viewers, is there is no such thing as a 100% guarantee in life, right? There's just no such thing. So why would it exist in immigration law? And so if someone is telling you that they can deliver something 100%, turn the other way and maybe start seeking a second opinion.
So, friends, lawyers, we definitely need in our lives to make our life discipline. Please do not try to solve your problems, legal problems by yourself. Connect with lawyers and help them and help yourself. Umar, so which kind of questions you get on everyday basis or cases?
Yeah. It's a great question. So really the two big questions we get is, when they introduce a new public policy, which is temporary, how does it affect the things that are already happening, right? And so those are obviously on a unique case-by-case basis. The one example I gave earlier was really what's been the most common, right? The second one I would say is for postgraduate work permits. So students are here, their program is done, they've graduated, how long do they have? What's the difference between implied status and maintained status? Because at the time that they came in the system, the term was one, and now it's switched to implied. And so, the names of these programs are always changing. And so the questions are really, look, here is what I thought of the system. Here's what change happened. I kind of had this plan because I've been doing it on my own. Now it's changed. What does this mean for the plan that I am working towards? And then for long term, which is really the approach that I'd like to take in almost anything that I do, is what does this mean for whatever your goals are? Is your goal becoming a PR? Is your goal eventually becoming a Canadian citizen? Is your goal that you want to go back to your country of origin? So the answer always depends on your goals, and as we know, goals can always change as well. So it's kind of a two-way relationship. Yeah.
You also work with the community, right? So is there some people, they cannot afford their fees or they are not in very good shape financially?
Right.
How is there any of the consultation is free?
So unfortunately, consultations are not free. I wish I could, but consultations are not free. But as far as the payment plan, it's very flexible, right?
Okay.
And so, some immigration professionals have the approach where they take all the fees up front. My approach is different, right? So what I do is I take a bit of it up front, I take another bit of it at a certain point, and then at the tail end.
So you give them some options.
I give them options. I'm very flexible, and I think, Saima Baji, in life you have to learn to be flexible, and it's a two-way relationship, right? At the end of the day, if the client is not happy, then I'm not happy, and so you also have to kind of know your principles and what you stand for, but at the same time you have to be open to working with people. So unfortunately, no free consultations, but my consultations are, I happen to think, quite affordable. And the benefit is, if you have a consult with me, then that fee then gets credited against your retainer. So what that means is, if a consultation hypothetically is $100, $200, if you decide to move forward with me in a retainer agreement, then your retainer fees, my legal fees, are then discounted by the amount of the retainer. Of the consultation
Okay,
fee.
that's great.
Yeah.
You also practice real estate, right?
That's correct.
And you can see, or we can see, there are not many houses to live.
Yeah.
So what is your one advice? Like how government can bring more houses?
Build.
New
Right? That the only way to do it is build. Look, in the city of Toronto, they've proposed these greenhouses, basically, right? So in your backyard, you can kind of build, and so that allows multi-generational families to not live in maybe these threeplexes, right? You can live kind of close enough that you're within an earshot, but far enough that every generation kind of feels like they're having their independence and all the things that they value, right? But building is really the only solution that I see, because our immigration numbers, we just hit 40 million not too long ago. We're going to hit, it's projected we're going to hit 50 million by 2043. and people need places to live, right? So, I mean, I'm not necessarily saying that we have to build in Toronto. What I'm saying is Canada-wide. Canada's such a vast, beautiful country,
Of course.
right? Toronto has this reputation of being, you know, the hub. Vancouver has a great reputation. Halifax has a great reputation. But the reality is we have to build, and we have to build quickly, right?
Yes. And the new students who are coming, what is your one advice to them? How they should live like 3-4 kids together, or how they can save some money?
Yeah, so another great question, Saima Baji. So the reality is, no matter where you're coming from, you have to know what you believe in, right? And so some people might not want to live. It's hard, right? When you come to a new country to live with strangers. So that might be hard. You might want to live on your own. You might want to live with other people. Look, I faced the same thing. When I was at law school is quite expensive, right? And so you want to find a way to keep your costs down. So for me, what I did was I spoke to the housing and accommodations department within my law faculty, and they kind of pointed me in the right direction. And so whether you're going to a college, whether you're going to a university, depending on where the school is located, the housing and accommodation services is the best person or best people really to talk to, and they can kind of tell you what the options are and what those costs might look like. Because the rental market, as you know, in Toronto it's one, in Vancouver it's something different, in Halifax it's something different, in Quebec it's something different. So it's really region specific, and only you know your finances, so you really have to make that decision. But like you suggested, living with other people, if you can tolerate it, might not be a bad idea.
And we need challenges.
And you need challenges. As they say, you know, adversity not only shapes, but it builds character.
Of course.
Life wouldn't be fun without challenges.
Of
right?
course.
Yeah.
So what are some challenges you have faced when you were a student, and then afterwards when you start your practice?
Yeah, so I mean, as a student athlete, you know, one of the biggest challenges is, can I make it to class? Because if I have to travel on a Friday, I might not be in class. Injuries is another one where, you know, you get injured as an athlete, and so you had this goal in mind that, you know, by this day and this competition, which we call track meets, I'm going to be able to throw a certain distance. And because of an injury or because of an exam that I really had to study for, I might not necessarily be able to put in all the hours, right? And so really just generally it's setting a goal, and then maybe not meeting that goal is a challenge, right? And so, I mean, you know, sometimes we say you have first world problems, right? And so the reality is your problems are your problems and how you cope with them. But I think the takeaway message that I learned was, have a goal, have a plan, and if that goal isn't achieved, take a look at the next time you set that goal or a different goal, how can my plan be reworked to kind of be a little more flexible? Yeah.
What do you want people to know about you?
I want people to know that I am not as scary as I look. I'm a friendly giant. I'm very easy to talk to. I'm always happy to talk. I can talk for hours. But I really just want people to remember that I care. I care deeply, I care genuinely, and really that's, you know, how I think my grandparents will be remembered and are remembered. I think that's how I want my parents to be remembered and how they will be remembered. And really, I'm just someone who wants to continue the legacy and the lessons that they taught me, and really, family is first. Right? Without family, I am nothing, and without family, we are nothing. So the reality is I am a God-fearing human, and at the end of the day, I think, you know, I don't want to make this too religious, but we together believe, and most of your viewers, I would wager a guess, believe that at the end of the day, that's who we answer to. And there's nothing really to be afraid of in this life, because we're all doing it for the afterlife, and you will be held accountable for your actions today, and that should be enough to motivate you to be the best version of yourself.
Guys, we're going for a short break. I'm going to see you after break. Hi friends, welcome back. I'm here with Umar Khan. Umar Khan, how are you doing?
Doing well, doing well.
Doing-
How are you?
I'm okay.
Good.
Yeah. So, any advice you want to give to the youth?
Yeah, I mean, look, number one, the advice that I can give you is the advice that I tried my best to live by, and that's listen to your parents or listen to the people who you value and love and who are there to support you, right? Those are really what makes you you, and those are the people that are sacrificing for you and will always have your best interest at heart. So always listen to the people who you genuinely believe are in your corner. One piece of advice I wish I got when I was younger, I mean, of course, sometimes your parents give you advice and sometimes you need to hear it from someone else, right? So for me, I grew up thinking life was very linear, right? You go to school, you maybe go to the Olympics, you get a job, and you work. And I found through my own personal journey that life is not linear, but learn that there's lessons in the non-linear. Sometimes you might have to make a lateral move, right? So don't ever think of it as you're taking a step back. Always think of it as you're pivoting and then moving forward. And so that's really the two best pieces of advice that I can give the youth. And I mean, if you ever want to talk, if you're thinking of going to law school, if you're thinking of, what undergrad maybe makes me the most suited for law school, I mean, the answer is all undergrads, but I'm happy to talk, right? I was on the admissions committee when I was at Western Law. I was a student ambassador, both during my undergrad, master's, and law program. And so I'm always happy to talk to incoming students, future students, and even those that might not even know if university is really for them, right? I try to give honest, informed opinions and advice, and at the end of the day, it's up to you to action them. And I'm always here as a resource, and I think, Saima Baji, if you'd like to share my email address, I'd be
Sure.
happy to reach out to the youth and their parents, and however really I can help in the community, I'm always more than happy to, because the community is what made me, and now by God's grace I'm in a position to give back, and that's really part of my mission.
I have a question, Umar. There are thousands of limbo cases, refugee cases, and immigration cases. They are pending for the last many, many years, over 20 years, 25 years. How the lawyers can help them? Do you have any opinion or any way to solve them?
Yeah, so I mean, look, the reality is immigration and refugee sometimes gets, clumped into one practice area, but it's really two. And so I only practice immigration law. My best advice for someone who is looking to consider, refugee, or, if they're coming to Canada claiming asylum, or if they're trying to come in through one of the economic mobility pathways, to speak to someone who does refugee law. On the immigration side, what I can tell you is under Section 47 of the IRPA, once you're out of status, it means you must leave Canada. However, under the IRPR, which is the accompanying regulations, under Section 182, if you can restore your status within 90 days, then you're good, right? But really what I'm saying to you is speak to an immigration professional. What led to you being out of status, what led to your case being in limbo matters, and it really matters for the solution and strategy that you enact. But if you're a case in limbo, definitely talk to a lawyer, reach out. And as they say, you can't really put a price on peace of mind. So even if you have to pay a little bit of money up front for a consultation, at least you have the peace of mind of knowing, hey, I spoke to a professional, they gave me an answer, and I'm going to run with that answer, or I might go and get a second opinion. Right, and I always encourage people to get second opinions, because at the end of the day, everyone's interpretation of this thing called the law could be different, and every case is really different. But again, you have to speak to someone that knows what they're talking about. And again, if you have a case in limbo, reach out to me. If it's within the immigration scope, I'd be happy to help. And if it's in the refugee scope, then I'd probably recommend doing a quick search and or maybe speaking to someone in your network that can point you in the direction of a strong refugee lawyer.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
This program is sponsored by We Donate Foundation. We Donate Foundation is helping the communities for many, many years. Please contact to this number if you guys need any sort of help. Mr. Umar, what is your favorite book? Are you a reader?
I love reading. I think you can't get through 10 years of education without reading. And so a long time, I really struggled with reading for fun. But now, as much as I read, case law and all the regulations that are coming out on almost a daily basis and the new programs, I try to read for fun as well. And so one book that I've picked up recently is called Getting to Yes. So it is a book that I've read before, but I'm revisiting it because I think the art of negotiation and the art of getting to mutually beneficial solutions is a skill that we all need in our regular life, but also in daily practice.
Umar, what is the easiest way to enter in a law school?
It's, again, a great question. I think it really depends. And I don't mean to sound like a lawyer when I say it really depends, but there's so many options, right? So, I mean, this would be specific to someone who I guess is living in Brampton or Mississauga or Scarborough, right? Do you want to go to a law school that's close to home? Do you want to go to law school that's a little further from home but within the same province? Do you want to go to law school that's somewhere else in Canada? Do you want to go to the US? Do you want to go to the UK? So the first thing really is, where do you want to go to school? And then look at the requirements, right? So generally what the requirements are for law school in Ontario is you have to write your LSAT, which is your law school admissions test, and then you have to get a GPA of roughly about 3.7, meaning you have to do at least an undergraduate degree. Now, I will say, as of recently, there are a few law schools that will accept college diplomas. So once upon a time, and this is to show you how quickly, things change, you couldn't go to college, only college, and then apply for law school. You would have to be a university graduate. So that's since changed. The best way really is to do your research. And if you'd like to go to school and you're considering writing the LSAT, maybe when you should write it, how many times you should write it, do you want to do a master's after? If you have those type of questions, reach out to the admissions team at the various schools, or I would be happy to I don't want to use the word coach, but I'd be happy to act as a resource for you. So think of me as kind of a library. You know that I'm open and I am a shelf, and come to me for the answers. I wish I could help everyone, but it's only when I'm asked that I can give whatever, call it wisdom or experience that I've been blessed to have, and I'd love to share it. But yeah, reach out, and I'd be happy to kind of help you with what might or may not work best for you.
I hope this program helps everyone, and thank you very much, Umar, for coming and join me in this show. I hope this program will help many of the students and many of the parents and audience. Social justice starts from home, and I will see you in my next show. Thank you and bye.